Coogs house. No, it was not a bad dream. It was not some other team out there in blue. Houston fell 82 to 81 on Saturday, and it just kind of feels like they also might have beat themselves a little bit.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougars, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. We should make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation, if you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. You know, the sports news of the weekend in a non-college basketball way was all these NBA trades and Doncic to Laker and all of the chaos with that. So if you followed any of that, throw some of that in the comments down below. If you have no idea what to say about Houston falling to Texas Tech 82 to 81 in overtime. I got a lot to say about this one after watching a second time on Sunday. For one, I do want to wrap up talking about how crazy the last 8 days of Cougar basketball have been. Two, I do want to give Texas Tech their credit and flowers for overcoming some major adversity. But first and foremost, in today's show, that is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I do want to talk about Houston beating themselves in this one. And there's a couple different ways what's happened. Again, I'm going to give Texas Tech a lot of credit in the second segment. I feel like I gave them a decent amount of credit in the post-game show that was live on Saturday. But it just kind of felt like there was moments where Houston just didn't quite look like themselves. In the second watch, again, this is mostly because I know how it ends. We watched it the second time, right? It felt like it took Houston way too long to get Juwan Roberts involved. Frankly, the fact that it didn't really happen before the injury is kind of startling. They went to him early, like in the first 3 minutes, like first possession, third possession, etc. And then he kind of just sat on that for a while. Had a great drive, had a great look on the first possession. And he kind of sat on that until the final 2.5 minutes of regulation, which he had 6 points and then the first bucket of overtime. You know, if you're doing math at home, that's 8 of his 18 points in like a 3-minute span of game time. It was admittedly a very crucial span of game time. I get all that. It felt like he was able to dominate that matchup when given it in motion. And when I say that, I mean I feel like earlier they'd kind of get it to his back to basket in a post-up spot, and he was kicking and feeding and isolating back and down. But when he got more of a face-up position, like from the high post, from the 15-foot area, he seemed to be a lot more effective going and off the bounce in this game. Taking so long to get to that one way, I think Houston beat themselves. And the other one, and I hate to get negative talking about a kid too much. Milos Uzan probably had his worst game as a Houston Cougar, coming off a Big 12 Player of the Week a week ago, right? Like Houston doesn't beat Kansas without him. Houston doesn't win those 9 Big 12 games without him. I mean, he's really played really well and come on as conference play has started. But this one, he was just sloppier than he's been. He had 4 turnovers, just 2 assists. I think we mentioned it in the post-game show, but his assist ratio is typically a 6-2 assist to turnovers. This one, he was 2-4. That just can't happen. Further, I think as a point guard, it took him a long time when Houston was trying to get into actions and sets. They got pretty far down the shot clock to do it. For what it's worth, in those sets, Milos had 4 turnovers. Juwan Roberts had 5, and they were trying to use him as a point forward, get his back to the basket for things. That's not great. Milos got dropped once on defense in the first half. That never happens to him. Credit to Elijah Hawkins for doing it. I'm not saying that wasn't like an impressive move. He pulled the string back on a 3. And Milos is playing the drive. Elijah Hawkins is not a guy that, as we said in the postgame show, has a lot of games with a bunch of threes this season. He's, was around 30% coming into the game, was like less than 15% in the month of January. Certainly say it's easy to say that progressed back to the mean in this game. He made his first 3, including the one where he pulled Milos back on the string. And I feel like, that's probably Milos playing the drive or whatever. and this is a one game sample, right? I'm not saying that Milos is like done or cooked or not going to be a potential, all Big 12 kind of guy at point guard. Absolutely is, right? Absolutely has a chance to be that if he continues to play like he had the previous 9 games, the latter 10 Big 12 games, he probably will be. But truthfully, like he just had his bad game and a bad moment. Like if he has that bad game against a team Houston's running out of the gym, like Utah, the way that Houston beat Utah up. If Milo plays like that, they might not double up Utah like they almost did, but they probably still win, right? Like it's just a bad time for a bad game. Tech did force him into some of those questionable decisions, but some of it's also just didn't look like he was playing his A game. Um, Another way I think Houston beat themselves in this one, and this is up to 3 now. I think I got a total of 4 here, kind of. Um, I counted, and I talked about this in the post game, talked about this on Twitter. On the second watch, 9 different times in regulation and once in overtime where Houston's going for the rebound and it like falls off, and they catch the ball and the foot's out of bounds, or the fumbling the ball as they're trying to catch off the hard rebound and goes out of bounds or whatever. And that's different times that Houston could have had an extra rebound and could have had the possession and could have had the whatever that ultimately ended up being Tech possessions. Now, a couple of those would have been more challenging than others, and so it might have been more like a 50-50 ball or whatever. But in a one point overtime kind of game, every single one of those possessions matters. Texas Tech went on and made 3 shots on the ensuing possessions after those kinds of plays where Houston's losing the ball out of bounds or can't quite keep the rebound inbounds or whatever. Those 3 shots, 2 of them being a 3, that's 8 points in a single point game in overtime. That's a pretty big difference. Now, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have scored eventually, or that Houston would have scored if they'd gotten the ball back or whatever. But ultimately, those are moments where like you just want to pull the rebound in, right? Dang. And those happen a couple times every time, and admittedly, some of that is also this was my texting back and forth with Buddy. Admittedly, that is in some way also like Houston, instead of just letting the ball go out, is chasing that down, right? So some of those might not necessarily have been entirely, I don't know, entirely like directly going to Houston had they not gone for it, had the out of bounds line been another 6 inches longer, but some of them would have, and that's a big difference. The fourth way it stuck out to me in watching this on a second time through that I feel like Houston kind of beat themselves on, and admittedly, it's different when you know the outcome because you kind of every time a substitution gets made, every time you kind of know what's going to happen next. Um, I felt like rotations in this one, whether you want to make that a coaching thing or guys playing when it's their turn to play kind of thing or whatever, rotations didn't seem to work as well as you'd hope in a tight game at home. In hindsight, I don't know that Emmanuel need to play that one. Emmanuel played, I believe it was like 18 minutes. I had 4 points, just 2 shots. Fouls going to be on the bounce. Fouls being late, closing out to 3-point shooter, just not himself. No one's angry about him playing hurt and not playing well. I think that's very natural. It's just that, other guys had some bright spots. I thought Terrence looked good for different stretches of this game. He played like 31 minutes, which is a lot for him this year after last year's injury. Malik Wilson, I thought, played very well. Like looking at, the Cougars, I guess, the Cryer and Roberts had the most points. It's hard to argue that Malik Wilson wasn't at least the third best Cougar on the floor. He had like a great mid-range fall away. He had a breakaway dunk on a steal and a fast break. Had a couple of really nice assists. I think the assist to Terrence might have been the pass of the night from Houston. The one assist to Jawan, actually, like he raises up in the lane and they collapse on him like a shot and he drops it down to him for an easy 2. I thought it was interesting. Again, Malik did not play a lot. I probably thought he needed to play more. He played well as of late. But when he's in the lineup as a small ball 4 kind of stuff, or Terrence is the 4, whichever one you want to make it, they treated him like a non-shooter. He did a really good job, I thought, of attacking closeouts and attacking defenders reaching out to him once he caught the ball and kind of using his speed to leverage what they were treating him like as a non-shooter. Malik just wasn't feeling hot that day from 3, and I get that, but I thought he played really well, and I almost wonder, did he need to play more, especially with the bigs and foul trouble and banged up and all that? And that's a way that I feel like, Houston's kind of shooting themselves in the foot, right? And not allowing those guys to get on the floor more. Similarly, kind of in similar criticisms, we're talking the last segment about like this 8-day stretch of Cougar basketball. LJ Cryer played 44 minutes, and it looked like it, right? On the other side of the rotation coin, guys looked gassed, guys looked dead-legged. And you wonder, like, if you're shaking those things up more, what could happen? I understand it's a close and a tight game, but you know, Mercy might get torched on defense, but does he make you a little bit more offensively efficient in a couple of those spots? Especially in the first half, you're having trouble finding a bucket and those kind of, I don't know, right? It's easy to criticize a Hall of Fame caliber coach after a loss and play Monday morning quarterback very literally. But in hindsight and watch the game back, it's like, oh, why is Malik coming out right now? He's feeling so good. And the guy coming in for him is just not on his best A game. Those kind of moments, I think, sting a little bit watching this back. Now, I've talked a lot about Houston beating themselves. I understand that is not the only thing that happened here. I want to talk about what Texas Tech did that was notable and how they kind of rode the wave a little bit in the second segment. But before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. This message is brought to you from Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, taxes is much more like matching with TurboTax experts, so you can get your taxes done as soon as today. An expert can give you your taxes and your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on the rest of your day. An expert who will find every single deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. So you get all the money back. You can, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes now. Get an expert at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Parker Ranger locked on Coogs talking about Houston falling in overtime 82-81 on Saturday night in what's been called the Big 12 game of the year thus far, Big 12 game of the weekend. I think it's a little quick to forget Houston at Kansas, but I get it. This game had a lot of everything, and I spent the whole first segment talking about what Houston did wrong. I do feel like it's, got to give credit where credit's due and what Tech did right. Tech played Iowa State within a point in Lubbock and comes down to Houston and beats them by a point at the Fertitta Center. And look, I get that winning on the road is tough, but much like Iowa State beating Tech by a single point shouldn't ding them a lot. Tech beating Houston by a point probably shouldn't ding them a lot. And I think the easy thing people from Lubbock are saying, and it might be because some of my own family is saying the same, is that, but Parker, Texas Tech did this without their leading scorer or head coach. Now, if you're living under a rock or you missed the game or you're out camping or whatever this weekend and missed it, Houston and Texas Tech played Saturday night. About less than 4 minutes into the game, JT Toppin of Texas Tech was called for a flagrant 2 foul. He jumped up to pass the ball across the court, kicked its legs out to make the pass, hit JoJo Tugler below the belt. Play went on. They finished the possession. JoJo Tugler was on the ground writhing in pain. And once the possession was over, they called an injury timeout. They checked Tugler out. They went over the monitor and they reviewed it, and they called a flagrant 2 automatic ejection foul on JT Toppin. Now, for what it's worth, by the letter of the law, a flagrant 2 is any hit to the groin that's supposed to result in an ejection. The wiggle room on this that people argued about was that it says at the end of the classification on the rule sheet, any contact by the offending player to the groin area of an opponent which is not clearly accidental. And that, like, not clearly accidental, that's functionally kind of meant like with intent. I understand that that's how you're defining it, that like you easily say that JT Toppin's intent was not to take JoJo Tugler out. He does kick and flail his legs. It wasn't quite Draymond Green bad, but it was bad. He gets flagrant 2 and tossed. Admittedly, I probably would have said clearly accidental, but it was a hit, called a flagrant 1. 2 flagrant 1s would get you tossed, right? So he's still like on ice, but he would get to play. Either way, they tossed Toppin. People at Tech are very upset. McCasland has to go watch the replay himself. Head coach McCasland, Texas Tech, watch the replay and then erupts. Now, whatever you think about what JT Toppin did, everything Graham McCasland did is textbook getting tossed. And I almost wonder if he wanted to. He's punching the air within a half arm's reach of the official. He's shouting. He's upset. He's flipping out. He's on the court running around. Listen, I understand that it's a natural thing to be upset when your guy gets tossed. That was asking to get tossed yourself, and he did. And frankly, I think it stands to reason that Tech played better afterwards than they did before. In the 15 minutes without him on the floor in the first half, Texas Tech played like they were on fire. In the first half, they went 13 of 25 from the floor, 7 of 14 from three, 9 different isolation buckets. Oh, and 13 of 25 means 12 misses. They had 8 offensive rebounds on those 12 misses. They had good shooters find space like Walton and McMillan. They had that Elijah Hawkins kid I talked about earlier in the show that is not a legacy shooter, get hot from three, hit his first three. They had an average, this is bananas for guys that know analytics, an average of 1.37 points per possession in the first half. 1 point per possession is good. 1.25, like 1.25 points per possessions, is like elite. 1.37 is like you're playing the JV team. That's ridiculously efficient offense. You're scoring feels like every possession at that point, and they did it with, generally speaking, fast breaks will inflate your points per possession because it's an easy 2 points on a breakaway. They only had 2 fast break points and 1 fast break in the first half. 41 first half points for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now compare that to the second half. 41 first half points, 31 second half points, 13 to 25 in the first, 7 to 21 in the second. From three, 7 to 14 in the first, 4 of 11 from three in the second. Even from the foul line, 8 of 10 in the first, 13 of 20 in the second. Rebounding, 20 rebounds in the first, 12 rebounds in the second. It all went away at halftime, and Houston clawed back and got their way to overtime in this one. But that first half, from the moment JT Toppin is ejected to the end of the halftime buzzer or whatever, Texas Tech played better than. I mean, that's probably the best 15 minutes of ball they've played all year. Certainly in the 2 and then expedited game or condensed game I saw myself, it was the best I'd seen them play. And it was nice to see, when I rewatched, it wasn't just an emotional first watch. The rewatch had the same kind of thing. And then B, looking at the stats afterwards, showed it very clearly, uh, different kind of half for them. For what it's worth, they made Texas Tech made 12 threes. That's the most they made against a Power 4 opponent this year, and the most the Houston Cougars have given up in a game this year. Outlier, right? Texas Tech had the season low of any game. They had an assist this year. They had just 10 assists as a team in the entire game, overtime included. That's indicative of a lot of isolation buckets, one-on-one guys, that kind of stuff. That again, guys just balled and made shots. It wasn't some schematic difference or got a double here. It was just guy after guy after guy could get an ISO, get their shot off, and it went in. And they weren't even. I mean, the distance tracker gets thrown off a little bit on some of this, but it wasn't like they were like wide open shots either. A lot of these guys have guys within an arm's length and they're still making tough shots. Opposite side of this coin, Houston, 5 threes. That's the second lowest number of made threes Tech has let up this year. Um, some of that's Houston, some of that's Tech's defense, but that's also an abnormality here. On the second watch, it became very clear. In the first watch, it kind of feels like every guard, but in the second watch, it was definitely Chance. Chance McMillan shooting the ball off the bounce for Texas Tech gave them a different level to their offense. It opened up a lot of their isolation stuff because as he's dribbling, you're having to send a double if you're going to do anything about it. Houston is reluctant to do that without a screen or something coming, or if you're not in the post. It really kind of changes up what they're trying to do. And Houston also does a lot of different funneling things. They're trying to funnel you into a double team, funnel you into the post, funnel you into a corner, funnel you into a baseline trap. And when you can just raise up and hit on that, I mean, that's Kobe level, like Kobe kind of stuff. And B, that's really killer for what they're trying to do. And I don't think anyone could do it for 7 games in a 7-game series if there's the NBA playoffs or something like that. But in a 1-game sample, whether it's March Madness or a random February Saturday, sometimes they get hot. And listen, I'm not saying that that's pejorative, like they can't ever do it again or Tech can't replicate that. That's a good team. I will say, admittedly, I thought if Houston played their best and Tech played their best, Houston win by double digits. And Vegas agreed with me for what it's worth. I'm not crazy there. Uh, Houston did not play their best, and Tech, given the situation, played out of their minds. Credit where credit's due. It's going to make for a fun rematch in Lubbock. Houston's going to want revenge. Toppin and McCasland are going to want to, avenge their getting tossed as well. Lots of storylines as we get to that one. But this one had one storyline I don't think we quite talked enough about yet. I want to get to that in the third and final segment of the show. But first, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel because Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams with two Big 12 quarterbacks, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. And whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on a coin toss, FanDuel makes it easier to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, you put down a $5 bet and potentially win $200 back for bonus bets in the Super Bowl. That's like icing on the cake. Download the app at FanDuel.com and get started. Bet $5, you win $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Park Ranger locked on Coogs. You're talking about Houston and Texas Tech battling it out of the weekend. Houston come up short, 82-81 in overtime. And I have to say, it was very apparent on the second watch. People don't want to admit this. People don't want to say this. But Houston looked tired, like really tired. And listen, if you had told me coming into the season, this 8-day stretch, right, where you go to Kansas, to West Virginia, and then host Tech at home, you'd have told me going into the season, that 8-day window from Saturday to Saturday, you're going to go 2-1. I'd have taken it. I absolutely would have taken it. And I probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. I probably would have felt pretty good about it. Like, honestly, going into the season, I would have thought it was fine. The difference is I probably would have thought you'd have lost a road game and won the home game. Houston's really hard to beat at home. This is the first home loss since January of 2023. I feel like that would have been my inkling, but on the whole, I would have taken it. The difference was you saw what Houston was able to do to Kansas at their place. You saw what they were able to do to West Virginia at their place. And you were just kind of riding. Certainly, I was riding high. You thought this team's going to continue to get better and better and better. The idea of a setback happening this quickly didn't cross my mind necessarily. Houston's got a tough stretch later in February. The second half of February is really tough for Houston. So I thought it might have happened then. Instead, it happens now. Now, the first two legs of this 3-game stretch in 8 days were both road trips, like true road trips, late nights, long flights, tough places to play, both in Fog Allen Fieldhouse and then over in West Virginia. First one was a double overtime emotional win, took a lot out of you as well. And on the second watch, when you know what happens at the end, it really felt like Houston just looked like a half step slow to a bunch of things. Half step slow trying to get a steal, half step slow trying to chase down a rebound, half step slow, an extra foot short of this, and whatever you want to say. And, I get that there's going to be an old school guy listening to this that wants to talk about conditioning and whatever. But also, it's just hard to play that many minutes in this game. And for a team that I thought we talked about coming into the season had a lot of depth, this is where not using that depth earlier in the season feels like it might have hurt you, right? I mentioned the rotations earlier in the show, but Sharp played just 18 minutes in this game. I think he's got to take the week off. Oklahoma State at home. You've beaten them on the road. You feel pretty good with that one. Colorado next weekend. Anyone can beat you on a given Saturday. Looking like that one's going to be okay. as far as they're rebuilding that program up a little bit. But as far as the other starters go, on Saturday, Milos Uzan played 37 minutes. He played 38 against West Virginia and 41 against Kansas. That's a lot of tough minutes in an 8-day window, right? Especially around the point guard. Joanne Roberts, who played after injuring his ankle and kind of like put the team on his back throughout the second half of this game, played 39 minutes in this contest, played 35 against West Virginia and 46 against Hunter Dickinson in Kansas, right? LJ Cryer, people kind of got on his case for not dominating the ball in the second half and not like saying like, give me the ball, get on my back, that kind of stuff. And I think social media was kind of running rampant with those kind of takes. He played 44 minutes of a 45-minute contest. He played 35 against West Virginia and 48 against Kansas, right? That's a lot of minutes in an 8-day stretch. I could go on and on about this with each guy down the lineup. But truthfully, I think you're starting to see the wear and tear of that 8-day window. It's not quite a break this week. They play a team they've already played and beat pretty handily on the road. They got Oklahoma State at home on Tuesday, and then they get Colorado on Saturday. But then they turn around and play Baylor at home on Monday night. The downtime this week between games, between Tuesday and Saturday, needs to be really intentional. I know John Houston does a great job. I know the Sampson Company did a great job of listening and working with Houston. I'm sure Sunday and even parts of Monday are going to be really hard for this team to rebound from what just happened. But saving those legs needs to be important too, because I think it looked like it was visibly starting to wear and tear on the guys a little bit. And I wonder, again, coming into the season, I would have taken being 2-1 over that 8-game stretch, over an 8-day stretch. I wonder if, I don't know. I'm not going to play ifs, ands, and buts because there's some candy and nuts and squirrels and never starving or whatever. But I do wonder how exhausted these guys' bodies were. I mean, Tugler getting banged up, Francis getting hit in the face, the ankles of both Emmanuel and Jawan, and we hadn't heard anything about Ramon Walker and all of those kind of things going on with him, and this just like feels like it's a bunch of little things that are starting to add up and pile up, and I wonder how long Houston can really go with that. This team is absolutely 100% healthy, talented enough to play and win that Monday, April 7th in San Antonio. Abso-freaking-lutely. It's about getting there, being healthy. Everyone's got to catch a couple breaks. That's not something that you don't have to do either. But what's Houston going to do along the way? Now, here's the deal. We'll be following each and every day here at Locked on Coogs. So hit subscribe. Find us on YouTube. Hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked on Coogs is a proud member of the Locked on Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.